This phone is something special. Just hear me out. So, it's loaded with last year's flagship MediaTek 9000 chip. But then, they've also stuffed up to 16 gigs of LPDDR5X RAM. At this price point, it's insane. And not only does it have a massive AMOLED 120Hz display, but then they've upped the brightness to 1450 nits. And then to enjoy all of that, you get a 5000 mAh battery with an 80-watt charger in the box that takes the battery from 0 to 100% in around 30 minutes. On top of all of this, the Nord 3 comes with the same camera sensor that was in the flagship OnePlus 11. I mean, on paper, this is a fantastic device, but let's dive deeper. Like, how does it feel in the hand? Are the speakers any good? How's the gaming? Does it heat up? How good are the photos and the videos? How's the battery life? Well, that's what the review is all about. Let's go. Look, it's not a great looking phone. It's okay at best. The camera module somewhat tries to pull off the Zenfone 9 look, but Zenfone 9 is a different class altogether. Though I really like how the phone feels in your hand. It's got these, really rectangular flat edges, flat surface, very smooth rounded corners, and a very balanced weight. Even the buttons on the side are broad and they're much more satisfying to click as opposed to sharper, narrower buttons. And the alert slider right there. Nice. Now I've got this gray color which has this silky smooth matte texture, but there's also a mist green in a glossy glass design protected using Gorilla Glass 5. The front glass, however, is protected using Dragontrail. And speaking of protection, it is IP54 certified for water and dust resistance, so it'll withstand splashes of water. The phone also supports 2 nano SIMs, no eSIM support, and no microSD card support. And for some good reason, there's an IR blaster right here, so you could literally configure all your remote controlled appliances on your phone and never worry about not being able to find your remote. I mean, just use your phone, very convenient. And by the way, this is a dual speaker setup, so you do get pretty good stereo sound from this. We'll do a speaker check later, but first, let's talk about display. It is a 6.7-inch treat. AMOLED display, 120Hz adaptive refresh rate that goes all the way down to 40Hz, so it optimizes battery as and when needed. It's an HDR10 Plus display, so you can experience HDR content without any problems. I do want to point out that the bezels are also quite narrow, so that flat display looks even nicer. But here's the crazy thing, this display can go as bright as 1450 nits. This is easily one of the brightest smartphones in this price segment. And let me give you a quick speaker test. Honestly, it's a fairly loud and clear speaker. It does lack bass, but I would say it's a decent speaker. Now, they have put in last year's flagship in this, the MediaTek 9000, which powers this Nord 3. And compared to others in this segment, I think it stacks quite well. Now, the Snapdragon 8 Plus Gen 1, it does yield higher performance scores. But I don't think in everyday use, you'll really be able to tell the difference. Also, a little unusual for this segment, but OnePlus has put in the latest and the fastest LPDDR5X RAM on the OnePlus Nord 3. And you have the option to take a 16 GB RAM variant. Amazing. So the Nord 3 allowed me to play Call of Duty multiplayer in high graphics and high frame rate without any issue or lag. Smooth gameplay, went on for playing about an hour, barely even got warm. But then fun fact, this phone has a touch sampling rate of 1000 Hz, while most phones, even flagships, have a maximum touch response of about 240 Hz. All that means is that it's going to respond to your touch better than 99% of the phones out there, and so gaming on this will feel very responsive. To get some other specs out there, it has a USB 2 port, so obviously data transfer rates are not going to be as high, but it does have a UFS 3.1 internal memory, so the storage is quite fast. It's got a 5000 mAh battery, it's sufficiently large, and Nord 3 is indeed very battery efficient. This will easily last you a full day, even with intense use, and you would still have some battery to spare. The good part is that they provide you with an 80-watt high-speed charger that will get you from 0 to 100% in around 32 minutes. So both from a battery capacity and charging perspective, I think it more than meets my expectations. Let's talk about cameras on the OnePlus Nord 3. So the primary lens is a 50 megapixel lens, the one that they also used for the flagship OnePlus 11. Then there's an ultrawide lens which is 8 megapixel and a 2 megapixel macro sensor. And here are some samples that I took using the primary lens. And by the way, you can download all of these photos from the link in the description and evaluate the quality by yourself. But I'm amazed. It's probably one of the best cameras that I've seen in this price segment. Details are good, images are sharp. The colors sometimes do get thrown off, like the red over here. It's more candy red instead of the red it really was. Even the grass here is greener than it was at the time I clicked the photo. But other than that, seriously, great photos, even in evening golden hour, very balanced exposure, not too dark and not overly dramatic either. However, it gets a little aggressive with sharpening when trees or leaves are involved. I mean, most flagship cameras tend to do that too, so it's not something too shameful, but again, just worth pointing it out. Even in indoor conditions, photos were really good. Now, I do want to point out that photos are slight bit underexposed indoors, but you know what? That works out a lot of the times. Parts that are brightly lit, they look very balanced and crisp. Like it avoids these halo or blooming type situations. And to be honest, these are really one of the best looking indoor shots that I've ever taken. And I often go to the same place to take photos just to be able to judge more accurately. And these are pretty good. And even in dimly lit situations, I was equally impressed. Not only are the details good, but the noise is also under control. And just look at the HDR capability. You're able to see so clearly inside the shops. I mean, this is really impressive low light performance for a phone in this price segment. I mean, best of the flagship cameras are unable to do this, but yeah, in very dark conditions, the quality does take a hit. Images are grainy, noisy, and over-sharpened. The ultra-wide lens is okay, it's just 8 megapixels, so it's not too detailed. It definitely lacks the color depth that the primary lens has, but then it has really good dynamic range. I mean, if you look at these photos, you can clearly see that the ultra-wide photos are definitely dull as compared to the primary camera. But then there are situations, for example, if you see this one, the ultra-wide photo is actually better, and even in this one. So that's basically good dynamic range. Now, here are some shots in portrait mode. I mean, good edge detection, decent background blur. Colors, again, not the most accurate, so that's definitely a flaw. And in this picture, it's just too punched up. There's also a macro sensor. I'd say it's not really something you'd want to use, just very low quality overall. Let's also talk about selfies, both normal and portrait mode, and it's a mixed bag, I'd say. Face looks fine, but just the other things around the face, it feels a little artificial. Most of the times during the day, the exposure seemed a little higher than it should be. And again, guys, just download these pictures and take a look for yourself. But it is a lot of hit or miss, sometimes the skin texture comes out really nice, but there are some times when the skin starts to get a little magenta. Like for example, in this lighting situation, it completely added like a big magenta tone. And in low light, I'd say it's decent. Not too bad, but definitely nothing great. In terms of video, the Nord 3 can shoot 4K videos up to 60 FPS, which is great. And although it does have optical image stabilization, I do feel the 4K footage is not very stable as I walk. I mean, I can feel the shake in the video, but the video quality in terms of details and lighting is quite nice. Even when, bang on against the sun, it captured quite a few details. It's not like it crushed the darks completely. It's a decent 4K footage and can be a lot better if you actually use the gimbal for stabilization. And as I said, it does shoot 4K videos at 60 FPS, so you can get very smooth slow motion videos from this phone. But then in very dim situations like really low light or nighttime, the video quality obviously takes a hit, right? I mean, it's still very good for this price segment, I would say. But then, yeah, it's not as great. Alright, so guys, this is a video sample using the front-facing camera of the Nord 3. Now, this is limited to 1080p quality at up to 30 FPS. It is a bit of a bummer because at this price point you do expect 4K from front-facing camera. But anyway, it's not there, thought you should know. The other thing is that it's got a bit of a crop right now because I'm shooting in this stabilized mode. So as I'm walking, you would see that it's quite stable. You could switch to a non-stable mode also, but it's going to be a little wider frame. But the other thing is I'm outside of a mall, and whatever audio you're listening to is being recorded straight into the microphone of this phone. So however it is, you're probably hearing it before I am. Okay, and now I have turned off the stabilization and now I'm walking and you can probably sense the difference. It's also a wider frame now, so you can see more across the frame, which is a good idea. But yeah, no stabilization. Now let's jump into software side of things, and it's got Android 13 with Oxygen OS 13.1, and OnePlus is promising 3 years of major OS upgrades and 4 years of security updates, which is pretty good. Now, that means that you will get Android 16 on this phone. And anyway, Oxygen OS is amazingly packed with features. Let me take you through a few of them. So first of all, there isn't any bloatware. It's just the basics app, so you get a clean, ad-free experience. You've got the ability to quickly pull out this smart bar from the side and get access to your frequently used apps or shortcuts. You can convert most apps into floating windows, resize them, and even tuck them into the corner so they're always handy. You can also customize the fingerprint animation and configure it as a quick launch tool for certain apps if you long press while you unlock. Obviously, you still have a 3-finger swipe to take a screenshot, but you could also just long press to take a screen grab of a certain section. Other than that, there are plenty other motion gestures and special features that you could enable or disable based on how you want to use the phone. And then there's also this interesting app called O Relax. It basically gives you a lot of these relaxing ambient sounds that you could choose and play from, but it also lets you create your own mix of ambient and ASMR sounds. Guys, overall, I think the Nord 3 at this price point is a very nice blend of design, performance, and cameras. In other words, it may not have the best camera in this segment, it may not be the best at gaming in this segment, and definitely not the best design in this segment. But it has a beautiful blend of all three things, which makes it a pretty good all-rounder phone to have in this price segment. But yeah, if you guys have any specific questions around the OnePlus Nord 3, feel free to ask me in the comment section. I'll definitely help you out. And if you enjoyed watching this video, make sure you hit that like button, subscribe to the channel guys, and hit that bell notification icon. And mark all, really helps the channel grow. I'll see you guys in the next one.